gotta be centered, guys. It's important. It's still not centered. Another week has passed and more gaming news has happened, and let's start off by talking about how Nintendo has found a new target in their everlasting quest to destroy any fan project about their stuff ever. As we discussed last week, there have been a lot of leaks going on as far as source code for different Nintendo projects and systems, and something that happened shortly after all that, in fact it happened the day I posted the last news video, is the fact that someone made a PC port of Mario 64. Now when I say port, I don't mean that they made an emulator that runs Mario 64 really well, I mean they actually just made a PC version of Super Mario 64, including things like supporting higher resolutions and using a different controller of your choice, like an Xbox One controller. Now when this first came to light, it blew up. A lot of people were downloading it, playing it, trying it out, and of course the very logical next step happened for anyone that's followed Nintendo's history with this sort of thing, and they have promptly now worked as hard as possible to shut this thing down. Nintendo is working with their lawyers to basically try to erase this thing from the internet as well as they can, not only in terms of things like getting rid of the ability to play it or download it anywhere, but even just trying to erase any trace of its existence. In fact, maybe this isn't the best idea for me to leave the video with this and title it, but we'll find out! But more importantly, they're definitely going after any kind of actual shown footage of it, which is why editor have a fun time picking something to show right now that isn't the game running, because I don't want this video to go down. While this news is no surprise, it is, as always, a bit of a letdown. It's not like Mario 64 is super easily playable in any current systems. Yes, there are some slightly not as old Nintendo platforms that give you ways of playing it, but still, it's a classic, and seeing it come to a platform that's more easily available to play on and even improve the experience a little bit is really awesome, and as quickly as it showed up, it's now, well, actively disappearing. If you got a chance to play it, awesome. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, well, keep your eyes open, who knows, it might always show up, even though Nintendo is, of course, working their hardest to make sure it doesn't anymore. By the way, while we're talking Nintendo, times being what they are, where, people more than ever need entertainment and ways to pass the time and just have fun, I'm working together with Guy with the Hair and Wolf Den to give away a Nintendo Switch Lite in the coral color bundled with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. For more details, including how to enter the giveaway, I have the Gleam link posted on my Twitter, so go check it out there. If you're not following me on Twitter yet, I do have that link down below in the description as always. Speaking of things disappearing, we have more shows being confirmed for cancellation due to COVID-19. Now, a lot of the big summer ones were already confirmed. We knew that E3 wasn't happening, for instance, but now a lot of fall-based shows are getting canceled as well because companies are realizing that even if things do calm down or get a little better, it's still not going to be the best time to throw a gigantic conference with over 100,000 people. Paris Games Week, which was planned for late October, has now been cancelled, and shortly after that, Tokyo Game Show has also announced that they will be cancelling their event that was planned for late September. However, in the case of Tokyo Game Show, they have announced that in place of that, they are going to run some kind of digital event, which is a bit of a relief to me. Personally, I think TGS is one of the more exciting events that happens year-round. E3, I know, is always kind of the main focus for a lot of people, but I love a lot of games that come from a lot of Japanese companies, and sometimes they save some of their bigger announcements from E3 and put them at the Tokyo Game Show. And considering the fact that E3 isn't happening anymore, we might see a lot more titles now kind of get shoved into that block in September. Now, it's not really a surprise that these events are getting canceled due to COVID-19. We were just kind of waiting to see as time passed whether or not kind of stuff in the fall was going to be affected or not. However, one of the kind of things that's happened as a result of this is just being a much heavier push for digital events. Not only is TGS going to be doing something digital for their conference, but we're also seeing more things announced. For instance, while we not only have the Summer of Games from IGN, which is going to be covering a lot of different stuff throughout the entire summer, we've now also just gotten the announcement of a new event called the Guerrilla Collective. A lot of different major indie companies are coming together and working with Kind of Funny Games to make their own digital presentation to showcase a lot of their new titles. There are a ton of indie developers that are involved in this. I don't have the time to list them all. I guess we'll just put them on the screen sometime, like right now. I will say that some of the ones that I am personally really excited for are Larian Studios, who's responsible for the Divinity Original Sin games, and more importantly, right now they are working on the sequel to Baldur's Gate 3. Whether they're going to show more stuff about that or have another game to announce, we won't know until then. Also, Zaum, I actually don't know what the right way to say their name. I think that's the right way. Sorry if I messed it up. Currently, they're a dev that only has one game under their belt, which is the amazing Disco Elysium. I am very excited to see what other projects they have in store because that was a great premiere game for them to have, and I'm really excited to see what they have next. On the subject of digital events, which I am just winning on the segue topics today, as many of you are aware, this past week was the Inside Xbox that was going to display a lot of new game announcements for the Xbox Series X, and as it happens, a lot of those games are also going to be just for Xbox One because of how they are approaching the platform. Now, I did a video talking about this, and the general response a lot of people had, which was, it wasn't exactly what a lot of people were looking for. A lot of issues arose from the fact that the word gameplay was used for the announcement, and then in the actual conference, there was, well, 1 or 2 actual gameplay-focused videos with a lot of hype trailers. Now, in defense of Xbox a little bit, something that's come up after the initial backlash is that if you look at a lot of the earlier wording for the event, they don't actually strictly say just gameplay. They reference that there's going to be gameplay along with trailers and other stuff, which is a little fair, but at the same time, obviously people latched onto that gameplay aspect of it, and especially in the case of something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which was the big game they were going to use to draw people in, and that ended up showing just a new trailer that was mostly just a recut of the trailer we already saw with 1 or 2 new scenes. So wasn't exactly what people were hoping to see. Microsoft has responded to this situation by saying that, hey, we messed up, we missed the mark a little bit. Clearly people had different expectations set up, and we did not meet those expectations. Now, this is just the first of a number of different special Inside Xboxes that Microsoft is planning to host. They have talked about how over the course of the rest of the year, they're going to be having announcements of new games and new news for the Series X. In particular, we already know that in July, there's going to be another showcase that is focused on new games from Microsoft Studios themselves, including, of course, Halo Infinite and new games coming from some other developers like Obsidian and Ninja Theory. One last thing on digital presentations, because this got announced while I was shooting this video, so I had to reset up and shoot this really quick. Ubisoft has just announced that they are also doing their own dedicated digital event taking place on July 12th, where we'll probably learn a lot more about Assassin's Creed Valhalla and maybe get a couple new Ubisoft game announcements as well. I've got my fingers crossed as always for Rayman and Splinter Cell, even though I know that's probably not happening. As for actual game-focused news, there's a couple new announcements recently for some expansions, and one very interesting tidbit about an upcoming game people are really hyped up about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I feel like I have to mention it. Cyberpunk 2077, thanks to ESRB rating reveals, it looks as though the game, as part of their character creator, is going to feature a very in-depth way of customizing your character's privates. Honestly, the most interesting thing to me about this situation isn't necessarily the fact that they're doing it, but what the full response is going to be. Obviously, some people are already freaking out or having interesting reactions just to the news itself alone, assuming this is actually a real thing based on those ESRB ratings. But really, once the game actually comes out and we see what form this takes and how the public in general just responds to it, it's going to be an interesting launch. As for new content in games, Apex Legends has announced that their upcoming 5th season is going to include a new PvE mode alongside with the traditional PvP, and Mortal Kombat 11 has announced their Aftermath expansion to the game, which will be adding a new story section and 3 new playable characters, along with a few new skins, which is something they tend to throw in with every bundle they announce. What's really interesting about this is the fact that storyline DLC isn't really a thing in fighting games normally. Sometimes there have been story modes that have been released post-launch and they're a thing that happened with Street Fighter V, but actually expanding and adding to the story mode doesn't really happen a whole lot. And if any company can pull it off, I think it's NetherRealm. I mean, really, as far as fighting games go, they're the only one that I think has really done a good job of making single-player story mode campaigns. They're very cinematic, it just feels like a fun movie, and really they're just the best Mortal Kombat movies. So I, for one, am really excited to see how the story unfolds. The pricing is a little crazy, because this is kind of the final DLC for the game. They are, of course, re-releasing a full collection where you can get the base game, combat pack, and this DLC all for $60, which is a great deal if you haven't bought the game yet. But if you have bought the game, the Aftermath DLC by itself is $40. And if you didn't buy the combat pack, which added all the new characters, you can get that as a bundle for $50. So if you kind of held off on buying stuff for a while, there's a lot of really great deals for getting it all together. If you've been buying content as it releases, well, yeah, the total price tag has gotten pretty high, but at least it's a really fun game. As for upcoming game releases, we're a little light this week. In particular, we've got two big things happening tomorrow. Like I mentioned, Apex Legends is getting their new season kicked off, and Halo 2 for the Anniversary Collection is happening on PC, which honestly, Halo 2 has always been my personal favorite of the series. I played that a lot as a kid, so pretty excited to see that come to PC. Also, if you're a big rhythm game fan, Hatsune Miku is coming to the Switch as well. That's it for the news this week. There are a lot more releases coming out later this month, which I'm really excited for, so I look forward to talking about those in the next couple of videos, and we'll see what other gaming news pops its head up. As always, if you guys want to see some more of my thoughts on just things that have been happening in the news lately, or reactions to announcements, that kind of stuff, you can always follow me on Twitter at Kenson, and I'll see you guys later.